So we are now recording the December 27th, 2019 Small Business Accounting Advisors. This is the last recording of the decade.
Ooh.
Happy Friday!
True.
Happy
That's
Friday!
true.
Happy last Friday! So everybody's surviving the holidays?
Having a great time.
So far, so good.
I just thought of something I was going to tell you earlier. I'm so proud of myself. I'm such a techie. We just got back from the Biltmore house right before Christmas, so we bought a big puzzle, and that's one of the things we like to do is we clear off the island, and so we all, you walk by and you do a couple more pieces. So we've had this big puzzle going. But the box, you know how the pictures on the box, and everybody's fighting over the lid, and you can't see it, and you got your magnifying glass and everything. And finally, ding! I took a picture of it, propped up my iPad, blew that puppy up.
It's a small thing sometimes, right?
Small things. I mean, how easy was that?
That's awesome.
That is
So that's my Christmas hint of the year.
So we're going to segue that into technical difficulties. I'm hearing a lot of computer crashes and
Knock on something.
yeah, knock on something. Wait, you had a hard drive crash?
Yeah, I was failing. And luckily, I got a solid state drive and everything went pretty smooth. And I got it done in about 2 days. And
Nice.
I mirrored the hard drive and it wasn't a big problem. So I'm glad about that.
So how do you like the solid state drive?
It's nice.
They're a lot faster.
And it's fast.
I know.
I know my new computer doesn't have a solid state drive, but my old computer did, and there's a huge difference, even between the computer that's failing and the computer that is new. The new one is so much slower than the dying one.
With the old hard drive, you could go get a cup of coffee and come back and it would still be loading up. But this one is just fast.
Nice.
Solid state drives and RAM. Those are the two things.
That's where you
Sarah, do I spy somebody in your background? Mark, get in the other chair. We can't see your face.
That's probably a good thing.
We love you,
He's
Mark.
blinking. He's got his Christmas light on.
Sarah, tell Mark I like his brim.
Yeah, he likes your brim. Yep. So blinking. You're too far away, baby.
Awesome.
So Dwayne, I was with Sarah the other day, and I had been kind of struggling with, well, I'll tell you exactly what happened. Here's what happened. I brought on, a consultant, and his files in my Dropbox got so big I was going to have to pay to enlarge his Dropbox.
Wow.
So I was like, we have this like Microsoft subscription. Surely I can use this for something, right? So I went. Yeah, it's paid for, right? So I went and kind of went and figured out the whole OneDrive / SharePoint and everything. So I was able to figure out how to get all of my files moved out of Dropbox and into the OneDrive so I could share with them.
Ernest, are you going to give a webinar on OneDrive?
This is it. This is the webinar right here.
Well, I was just thinking while he was talking, I was thinking, how could we? It's hard to show you when we have real files, real client files.
Right, exactly.
Pretty much has to be like a recording, then you have to go back and blur and all that,
But how did you get him on board to OneDrive as opposed to Dropbox?
Oh, my the contractor?
Yes.
Oh, well, he's just as frugal as I am. He's like, I don't want to pay for it either. So that's why we started looking at it. And it's funny because as soon as we started, as soon as I dug in and, worked through it, it didn't really take that long. It was just, the big obstacle was when you install OneDrive by default, what you end up seeing is your personal files, your personal directory. And so sharing files with other people is obviously the biggest use case, right? And so when I worked through like, all right, so if you open it on SharePoint
Okay.
and share it from there, it actually created a whole new directory. So like on my machine now, there's like a top level folder that says Better Idea Group, because those are all the files that are shared within Better Idea Group. There's a top level folder there that says Accounting Services Bureau. Those are all the files that Sarah is sharing with me. There's a top level directory for a couple of other companies that I share files with through OneDrive. And it actually makes like a lot of sense because it's a lot of clarity. These are files that belong to organization XYZ. These are the files that belong to me. And so sharing then became a lot less painful. And the other thing that I really liked about it once I figured it out was when I jump inside Teams, the same files that I'm sharing on my drive, as though it's just on my C drive, appear in Teams and also appear on SharePoint. So it really has kind of unified that whole world, right? So now I can go into Teams and reference a file, and it's easy for people to get to.
And it's just as easy, if not easier, as Dropbox to use if it's set up correctly. See,
Set up correctly, yeah.
That is the trick, is you have to go in a certain order or things don't land where you think they're going to land. And that was my hang up. I couldn't wrap my head around it. And all I wanted to do is go to File Explorer and save a file, or go to File Explorer and see a file. And this idea of some of it in SharePoint and some down here on the H drive, and so it wasn't working for me. And once we linked it up, you start at Teams, then you go to SharePoint.
Yep.
It all of a sudden, it was right there in my File Explorer, just like it's always been. So we call our H drive the hallway drive, the server. So my employees know that everything's on the H, and that's just a map drive, really. So now I said, look, there's your H drive, and there's Accounting Services Bureau, and then there's all your client. And it was like, once they saw that it was still right there. But here's the best part. The best part is, well, I'll tell you what we ended up doing was playing with it. Then I would show Ernest my screen so he could see, what I was seeing on my side. And then he would share his screen. And then we kept just popping back and forth as we shared things and moved things around just to see how.
Across the country.
Huh?
Ernest,
Across the country.
Across the So, so when I showed my employees that Monday, I said, I'm going to take, I've got files going back. Yeah. So I said, let's do 17, 18, 19. Okay. And what I said, they're going to go client by client, tell me which folders and which files they want to have access to out of the office. Everything else is going to stay on the server, and I'm just going to rename it, archived. And so those files need to be tethered to the office if you have to have them. And then the way it works is they go on their laptop, they go into the team, they go into the general channel, they click on files. It's automatically in SharePoint. There's a little button that says go to SharePoint. Hop up to SharePoint, and that's where you say sync. So what it does is it syncs the directories down to your C drive. But you can either have a duplicate copy of what's in the cloud, which will fill up your C drive, of course, or you can then say save space, or what is it?
Yeah, free up space.
Free up space
is a pointer on your drive.
And what it does is it looks the same, except it has a little cloud icon next to it. And so it's not physically on your C drive, but it looks like it is. But if you need it, you just click on it and it There it is. So it
Downloads it.
It
Then
downloads it.
that file.
Yeah, exactly. So you have the best of two worlds. It looks the same. It has all your files, all your directories, everything that you're used to. It's not hogging up your C drive. I can have Karen take care of all her client files, Angela all hers, but yet with the right permissions, we can, in case of emergency, Karen can still get Angela's files. I can still get Karen, So, so now between QBox for QuickBooks, the SharePoint for our regular files, we are not tethered to this Office at all. So
I am really looking forward to getting my team set up.
So really, so we were trying to think, there are tools where you could migrate to the cloud and move folders on, but my client base is small enough now. We each have about 5 or 6 large clients that we take care of. I really think we can just do it client by client, and and just
Hey Mark, did I tell you the major punch in the face I got with this migration?
No.
Oh yeah. So I was silly enough to try to take a backup of my website and move it up to SharePoint.
Yeah.
Oh, it is not like that at all.
Didn't.
No, not even a little bit. And the reason that it doesn't, the files that it doesn't like are the internal web server files. Because it's like web server files inside of a web server that's,
Well, you can fix it.
So, yeah, my website backup is no longer, I had tried to push it up there and it was such a drama, it just wouldn't sync the other files as long as those. So, and the reality is I don't need those files for my website backup anyhow. So I just went through and deleted them all. But that was like the only one thing that was like a fairly serious drama for me.
Interesting that you bring up backups, because as we become reliant on this, it's probably a good idea to have a third-party backup of your, if it becomes your one and only location for your files.
Well,
Got pretty good infrastructure, but and you can have versioning and you have all that going on, but
He's going.
I just don't like to rely on one.
Well, we use Carbonite for the
provider.
server, and they do have a version now. It will back up your
So
SharePoint.
there's several out. There's Veeam is one that has it.
I'm sure you're right, but
You're going to risk
when you say things like that, it just makes my head explode from the standpoint of the whole argument for cloud computing was like, oh, the professionals are going to do the backups, right? The professional, and the same thing with QBO and ChronoBooks now. It's like I was listening to Matthew's webinar about like a lot of the things that it's not a perfect backup because they have to use the SDK. And as a programmer, I understand all that. I'm like, but you either have a backup or you don't, right? It's either there to give you peace of mind or it isn't, right? So yeah, I'm not going to do a third-party solution. I'm going rogue.
But that's who I'm married to, Ernest.
It's a belt and suspenders thing, and it's also the fact that none of these infrastructures are infallible, you do run a risk.
I'll see how much it costs.
It's like there are a bunch of cloud myths. Yes, you do gain that flexibility where you're not having to worry about that kind of stuff. I mean, for the most part, the backups are pretty much going to be set them and forget them kind of thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's not that big a deal, and it's from cloud to cloud. So as long as it's on different infrastructure, you're okay. And the other thing is, you have myths like, well, it's going to be cheaper in the cloud. Well, how many of us have saved money with stuff in the cloud? So,
well, I'll tell you. I mean, I'm not a complete idiot, so I feel like to the extent that I have a machine, any machine that is syncing those files locally.
Oh, you're syncing them locally. See, I'm thinking about doing that.
That was my question.
That's what I'm saying. If it were all synced locally, yes, I would have
Then everyone would have a copy. If
Right.
you lose yours,
But I can't do my whole H drive on these little, on my laptops. I'm sorry. So
Right.
I don't want them on there. So I like the idea of that marker idea, but.
Don't some of these cloud solutions, they actually switch halfway through from one data center to another, that type of thing?
I don't know.
No?
Well, they have redundancy, right? I mean, and I think when I went to the original, so prior to Office 365, it was BPOS, Business Productivity Online Suite, right? And I went up to Redmond. I got the whole briefing, right? They call them an airlift when they first roll something out. And they even then, they talked about all of the levels of redundancy they have, both from an electricity standpoint, obviously servers, operating systems, and everything else, internet connections, clearly. Like, if they can't make sure that I can get my data back with those levels of redundancies, who the heck am I, right?
Yeah, but I'm with Mark. See, that's what my problem is. I can't wrap my head around cloud backup. I'm used to having a physical thing that I can go to and restore back to. I'm too afraid of those little bits and pieces getting dispersed all over the cloud and never coming back together in my file again.
Get it backed up to its own little partition on its own little drive, right?
Right.
Until somebody steals that drive and then they put you out of business because they have a copy of all your critical
Oh,
data.
no. My laptops are double encrypted. They're boat anchors if you steal it. I call it double encrypted because I have to log in twice. He goes, not double encryption. I'm like, double something.
So, okay, does that mean that your hard drive is encrypted?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I recommend you really want if any of your drives have any kind of confidential information on it.
Yeah. Nobody's breaking
as
into
far
this
as
thing.
client information and things like that.
But I do have to log in. I have like BitLocker.
BitLocker. Most systems are going to support BitLocker.
Yeah, I have BitLocker and I have
But I guess it comes down to who owns the information. Remember we talked about that before? Do you really own that information, or are you sharing that information?
Oh, what's the thing lately? The chatter about QBOA, the accountant's QBO. We're into it, has gone into your company files.
All right, let me cut you off right there.
Wait, that
Because
happened to
I'm
me
going to be
too.
Matthew and cut you off right now.
Right.
So the issue was there was a bug that was created. A developer created a bug which rippled through and made changes in people's data files. My understanding, based on his message and a couple of other follow-ons, is they acknowledged that it was a bug. It was unintentional, that it was a bug, and that they're going back to rectify it.
It's a Sarah's bug.
I'm like, what is she doing? She putting her hair up there or whatever?
That's Sarah's bug. She's got a bug.
Matthew,
a bug!
I want you to know this is one of those times where I was the optimist for you, buddy.
Okay, so no human being went into the file. A bug crawled into the file.
Yeah, I don't know the nature of what they were trying to accomplish at the time, but it was not good.
It was
and
creepy.
It caused a problem.
It was a creepy bug.
Well,
And it did cause a little bit of a backlash. I saw it on a lot of forums and everything, but Matthew, inside story there, got the word out. So let me share that now and kibosh that before you get too deep down that conspiracy theory road.
No conspiracy theory, but the fact is, you know, you think your data is yours, and all of a sudden it's not acting the way it was, and all of a sudden inactive or active, and you know, it's like, and it feels
Changes
like
without you doing anything.
exactly.
Whether
Somebody got
it's
into my client list. My client list is acting funny, whether it was a bug crawling around or whatever. It's very unnerving.
Is that the one where the clients, the inactive clients got reactivated and your QBO clients got duplicated?
Yeah.
I got
Yes, that is.
So it's really just a big database in the cloud, and somehow the database was.
It is. It is a great big database in the cloud. And if anybody had delusions any other way, let me dissuade those from you now. Your data is mingled with lots of other people's data. It's partitioned by that little long weird number that is your company ID. So.
Got it.
Speaking of which, segue. How do you get the company ID? Because I was watching Matthew's article on how to download QBO for desktop, and you have to get the
Yeah.
ID. And I would click on it, and that ID would pop up and go away, and I'm like, what do you think? So I never did.
So just like Windows Desktop, Sarah, just like Windows Desktop,
Yeah.
there are shortcut keys that will, you know, give you all that love.
Yeah.
I don't have one in my head right now.
I
But there's a
Control
shortcut.
question mark.
shortcut key.
What is it?
I think Sarah needs that shortcut key.
Shannon, tell her.
Control Alt question mark.
There you go.
Cool. Oh.
I don't use it often enough to have it in my head, but yeah.
All right. Where's my computer?
Speaking of transition, so, you know, I talked about Teams with regard to file sharing and everything. So I gave you a little bit of heads up on this before the call, but I'm thinking about, I don't know if I can say committing to, I'm thinking about doing a kind of a 1 hour client call, just to, you know, to hear people's challenges and, you know, see if it's a quick, easy answer that lots of people can benefit from. And so as I started thinking about like doing that, I was like, well, I have a Zoom subscription, but you know, at some point it might grow. And much like I did with the Dropbox, I was like, I wonder if Teams has a solution for this. Well, it's not even Teams, it's inside the Office 365 SKU, right? And so as
Skype? Didn't they
a developer, I have an E3 subscription. And it turns out that, I don't know how many people remember this, but as soon as I saw it, I was like, oh yeah, that must be what they did. A long time ago, Microsoft bought a company that did streaming technology. And the name of the product is now called Stream. Wow. So, and it's a part of the 365 E3 product offering, right? So if you have E3, you have this ability, you have to go flip a bunch of switches to turn it on. But if you flip all these switches, effectively what you can do is you can actually host a webinar for hundreds, if not thousands of people.
Wow, nice.
Whoa.
That's cool.
That is cool. I would never be able to do it. Number one, I don't know what subscriptions you don't need to do what for Microsoft.
E3.
And number two, I would have no clue about switches. I would need to hire a consultant. So there are a lot of really, really cool things that Microsoft can do. You just have to know what they are.
Right.
And it's constantly changing.
And it's constantly changing. To me, it's like building a foundation on sand.
Yeah, Teams, they're really focusing a lot on Teams and improving that platform. They've got, I know there's some things coming in the new year here some better integrations with Outlook and things like that.
Did you say building a foundation on sand?
That's what it feels like for me using Microsoft.
Well, I mean, I would certainly say that about saying QBO, but I mean, just QBO.
It's the same thing, actually, because you feel like you know how to do something one day. You go to bed and you wake up and all of a sudden you don't.
Every day.
Yeah.
You laugh, but that's where I'm coming from. And I try to keep up, but I'm not a developer, so I really can't.
Well, I mean, I don't even think it's about being a developer. I mean, because, I'm only a half programmer. I'm more of an
I think you're a
programmer.
I don't think so.
But, really, I mean, I always like to address this issue because it's like, look, I get some grief with some of the other people that are on this call from time to time. But, the reality is, and I put a posting, which is probably not very popular with some people, but the reality is changes impact people's productivity, right? And to the extent that you wake up in the morning and you're like, where did they move my cheese today? That's hours that they're taking. That's hours that they're taking away from you to be productive. And I think that there is. Like Lady Justice, right? There are some scales here that are not really being weighed properly right now. I'm absolutely 100% all for moving the bar forward.
And I am too. I really think that the greater things that they're doing is wonderful. I'd love to be able to participate, but I feel like I'm left behind is what I'm feeling like.
Well, because it's like, when you move from, I mean, and I understand why it's great for software companies. I are one some days, and there's a lot of really good reasons for that. But by the same token, your business user, I don't want to have to learn software every week, right? And a model with even quarterly releases where, okay, I can sit down for a couple of days and absorb a quarter's worth of changes would be better than, wait, where did that go?
Exactly.
Every single day.
The thing is, I have my weekly planner that I actually do, my weekly plan. I don't know, you can't say it. It's my Rocket Book.
Yep.
That's my weekly planner, and I do my weekly planning on Sunday, and I know that Monday I'm going to be doing this, Tuesday I'm going to be doing this, Wednesday I'm going to be doing this. None of those days have Microsoft on it.
They don't have QBO on it either, do they?
They don't have QBO on it. So when I turn on my computer and I can note, we'll use QBO as an example. Like when I turn on my computer and I need to write a check and I go to the plus signy thingy, the twirly little thing, and it's not there. Well, QBO, I am going to say, is getting better, letting you know this, that when they do make changes, they do have the big yellow window that pops up. Here it is.
Over here.
Here it is.
How do you get that to
And I
stop?
appreciate
It's like, I get it already.
But when I'm done with it, I want to turn it off. Thank you very much.
Well, I know
Again, it has
for
to do with productivity. So
2 weeks I was closing that window.
I know, right?
Mine's still popping up.
So you're right, Ernest. Where is the scale? Everybody's at a different level. And that's kind of my point too. When you're talking to people, the first thing, like when I'm talking as a consultant to a client, one of the things that I am assessing with that client is their computer knowledge. Where are they at? Are they still using just a plain old phone? Are they trying to do this with a tablet?
Right.
I mean, you really need a computer in certain circumstances. As much as I love apps and tablets and phones and stuff, that you need a computer and you need to know how to get around, and certain things assume that you're already at a point that you may not be.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think that's really smart of you too, right? To go out and go find, people that can absorb, new technologies. But, the thing that I wrote in the article, I'll say here, because I think it bears repeating a lot of times, with a very fast pace of development, the QA goes out the window, right? When you've got two guys that have looked at something in a product as complex as, an accounting application that links together with, I'll be generous and say 500,000 applications, whatever the number is, those are a lot of moving pieces. And I don't know any two people in the world that can keep track of all the interactions around that. And so it's almost inevitable, that you're going to be creating some friction, some drag. You're going to be impacting the very people that you think you're helping, right? So, and I think that's where that scale comes back in, right? It's not just my productivity because I don't know where to find something. It could be my productivity because, like last week, right, with the whole client list, think about the lost productivity around the number of people that even just talked about it. It's like, why are we talking about stuff that is so, if you will, unimportant, right? We shouldn't have to be talking about stuff like that. We should be talking about, one of the fun things about, she's got her earplugs in so she can't hear me, but one of the fun things sitting here with my daughter this week was she's analyzing a company's balance sheet. And, and she's pulling out all these facts and everything. And I mean, I don't mind saying I've heard something from her. Shh, don't tell her. But why are we talking about, differences in a balance sheet and that, and analyzing profit lines instead of like, oh, did they mess my client list up again? You know what I mean?
Exactly. That's my point exactly. I love progress. I love the things that they're doing. I'd love to be able to keep up.
Yeah. Yeah. And not feel bad about, hey, my client base is at a level that, sorry, you don't have the features that they need. I mean, obviously they're continuing to try to get their software to that level and grow into the next tier. But if you don't have that product, why are you making me feel bad that I can't accept a substandard product? And I think that there are certainly some people that have kind of gotten to a point where it's like, I saw Seth shame people publicly, like there's these old people that, still want to be on ledger paper. And I'm like, hold the phone. I mean, I think there's, again, let's talk about that scale thing. There's a difference between somebody who wants to be on ledger paper and won't adopt a computer and somebody who looks at a situation and says, you don't have the feature functionality that my clients need. Therefore, I'm going to use what is acceptable to them. I think we need to slow down a little bit on the public shaming.
Oh, absolutely.
Well, and
I
ledger
agree
paper
with
isn't going
that.
to crash.
What?
Ledger paper isn't going to crash.
Well, there's a difference between staying with paper because you're afraid of the cloud, those kind of reasons. But when you talk about feature sets in a professional, we know our clients, we know the features. And if I make a decision that a certain product is not a good fit, don't shame me because I haven't gone your way of doing, if I could pick only clients that'll fit with that software, sure.
Or having your software go behind your back and contacting the clients, telling them.
Well, there's all kinds of ethical problems too, but just plain old feature sets. I am not going to be shamed into making a decision with my client that isn't your decision with your, you know?
Well, there's all kinds of choices like that. And so we have, you know, we have
iPhones and
iPhones, but then
Androids.
we have people that have flip phones. And if you're not doing anything, if all you're doing is making phone calls and that's your only need, then a
Why
flip
do you
phone
need a
is fine. Why pay
smartphone?
for, you know, ridiculous price for a smartphone?
Why pay $1,000 to have a computer in your pocket if you're never going to use it?
Exactly.
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 So as those kind of, it's all the same. It's, you know, it's fitting the tool to the task.
That's it.
Well, you know, it seems like in the marketplace that they're producing upgrades almost every 6 months or every year. Okay. And by the time you get used to using one system, they've got a new one that's the latest and the greatest. Now, I grant
Better
you,
and does this better.
grant you the
does that
millennials
better.
they're like hotcakes on that type of stuff. But people in our age range, they're slower to change to something that they're comfortable with.
Well, maybe why do I need to spend another $1,000? Maybe I want to keep my $1,000.
Yeah, you know,
There you
I
go.
don't
There you
even
go.
want to put it into you know, an age thing, because I
Yeah.
bristle actually a lot when I hear about being ageist.
Yeah, no,
But
it
can
is.
you
Yeah.
imagine?
I
I
think
mean, and I know the day is going to come. I know
Yeah.
the day is going to come, but can you imagine somebody telling you you shouldn't own a car? I mean, and I know that day is coming with Uber and Lyft, and you know, there's
Yeah.
some around that. But if you were somebody who lived out in the country,
live urban.
or not in a non-urban area, and somebody's
Yep.
like, "What do you mean
Like
you own a
me.
car, man? I take Uber everywhere." Oh, great, that's good for you in New
Good,
York
that's on
City.
your bike.
It gets you everywhere you need to go. But out here, we got to drive 20 minutes before we see the first. You know, I mean, that's not where I'm at. I have lots of
Got
neighbors around me, but I think the point is valid, right? And that argument's going to come. So
We're
there's
already
a
hearing it. We're already hearing it because the ones that are shaming live in cities that have what is this fiber, this phenomenal access to the internet.
That's
Yeah.
true too. There is
And-
that too. There is
I
a
mean, I'm not out in the boonies, but I'm on an
Hardware.
island, and I don't have that fancy internet, so I can barely function with what I have.
problem.
Hey,
So,
I'm just glad I have internet today, because when I got home from the office, we have line of sight broadband, which is just as slow as dial up and just as good as dial up. And
you've got mail.
but we don't have that, you know, that horrible sound when we connect. But,
Oh, yeah, right. I know exactly what you're talking about.
yeah, but I mean, so tonight's a night where internet's hit or miss. My cell service is hit or miss, and I'm just gonna be okay with that because we live, you know, 20 some miles from the nearest big city, which is still too close for me.
There actually, when we were up in the mountains, we were talking a lot of galleries and, you know, how they're dealing with point of sale and things like that. And it's rough. I mean, there are actually businesses that back up their files and come down into the town to see their accountant. They have to physically bring that flash drive, you know.
Yeah, nothing more humbling to me when I was a point of sale dealer, and I would go out into a farming community because I was doing a lot of garden centers,
Yep.
and dial-up was all they had, and we're not talking about 10 years ago. We're talking about a couple of years ago.
Right. Right.
You know, and I'm like, I want to be able to remote in and fix your machine. And they're like,
Exactly.
that's funny.
Exactly.
Right. Well, in California, when those wildfires burn and the electric company turns off the power, that's affecting a lot of businesses. And that's going to keep happening if we keep having fires. So,
Right.
Exactly.
We don't have that. See, that's why I think I'm still going to be, even as things improve, sort of a hybrid. You know, it's hybrid, local files, cloud files, scanning some, paper some. So, you know, but we're all going to make decisions based on our experiences and our knowledge and the type of clients that we have and where we are. And nobody could, we can all help build people up and support people for, what they're doing. But yeah, I'm quite tired of the,
Yeah.
Well, let me tell you this story about, I was telling you about the point of sale dealer. So I was an NCR dealer, if anybody didn't know. And so they had like an interesting situation because it wasn't even cloud-based, right? We're talking about DOS to Windows.
Yeah.
And they had a DOS-based application. This is like 5 years ago. And they wanted so badly to get rid of that version because it's very expensive for software companies to maintain, multiple versions of a product. And, it's very different. At least the automobile industry, it's your car, buddy. You figure it out. And if there's a couple of guys down the road that, know how to work on that thing, still great, but our dealerships are cutting you off at some point. Software is not quite that same thing, but man, these people would, I think they gave like at one point a 75% reduction. Please go to the new version. They cut the price 75%, and they still had huge numbers of people who they couldn't get over to the new platform. And I mentioned that kind of in the context of QuickBooks Desktop versus QBO. I mean, QBO is not even cutting the price. They're actually escalating that price, right?
A lot.
So not only are they facing the headwinds of, ooh, that's very expensive. And I'm not saying it's not worth it. I'm not saying that at all. But they're not only fighting that headwind, but they're also fighting that other headwind of like, you don't have the feature functionality, or go back to the productivity argument. I don't have the cycles in me to devote to making kind of that transition. And then, the third area, which is also totally out there, and I know Sarah and I have talked about this, and I'm not trying to age anybody here, but at some point it's like, can I specialize in this other thing and write it until I don't need to make money anymore? Because that's a thing as well, right? And all of those factors are totally impacting into it. It'll be interesting for me to see if they at some point just, decide to cut their losses and sell the product off to somebody else and let, those who want to remain in it. Time will tell, right?
Exactly.
Maybe they'll get
will.
Speaking of time, we are about out of time. This was a great conversation, I think.
It really was. Thank you very much.
Yeah. And Linda,
I have something to share with you, though. If you are parked, if you have pulled off an off-ramp and you're parked next to a major freeway, your phone puts you in safe driving mode. I'm not driving anywhere. My phone isn't moving. I'm not moving. My car's turned off. But I'm in safe driving mode because my phone thinks I'm driving. So that's why I have.
Tell us where you are, because you show as Galaxy J3 Prime.
That's me.
You had to spend an extra night in Vegas because the roads were closed down. So tell us what's happening. Where are you?
Oh, I'm just south of Barstow now. What I decided to do is they had the road open coming on the 15th from Vegas back, and the Cajon Pass, which is right before I get to my house, that's open too, and that'll be fine. But what happened is there was a lot of snow and ice on the 44,700 foot summit just south of Vegas. And they had people going off on another, like a 2-lane road kind of thing, 1 lane in each direction. And me coming from upstate New York and knowing how to drive in snow and ice, not wanting to deal with all the Californians and Nevadans who don't know how to drive in snow and ice. I went east to Henderson, which is on the east side of Vegas. I
Okay.
headed south on the 95 parallel to the Arizona border. And then I got on Interstate 40 and I took 40 because, and it was piece of cake. And I was really glad I did, but it was like unbelievable. And I thought, well, it's nice to know there's a good alternate route. It's just 77 more miles. So it's basically an hour more, but I've stopped 2 or 3 times at rest areas and also to make phone calls and to do messages, texts and that. I just figured I'm not going to take a chance. So
Glad you're safe.
Absolutely not.
yeah, I'll be home by dinner time tonight. I think I'll take myself out to dinner.
Yeah, there you go.
There you
That'll
go.
be
Sounds
very
like a
Go on
plan.
social media and say hi so we know you made it home okay.
I will get on and I will say that. So, well, you see, you already saw on social media that I was spending an extra night.
right. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so I'm signing off and I know you're signing off.
Yeah,
So
we're signing off. All right.
All right, take care.
See you next year.
So, gosh, Happy New Year, everybody, huh?
Yeah, Happy New Year, everyone.
Happy New Year's.